Sorry about that. Where were we? Alright! Welcome back to Driller, the forefront of founding new and innovative ways to reduce your team's headcount. Maybe while you're doing that, you'll kill some bugs as well. And what better way to exterminate arachnids than pressurized napalm, nitrogen, and fluoroantimonic acid? That's right, we're busting out the science words today, so put on your chemical-resistant gear and let's get into it. Starting off is the CRSPR Flamethrower, and like most other weapons, it has an ammo overclock. Lighter tanks uses a less dense alloy to store your fuel, resulting in you being able to carry an extra 75 units of future fire. If you're a coward, just take an extra resupply. Gunner isn't going to use it. I'm sorry to the 12 people who enjoy lighter tanks, I just have a vendetta against ammo increases since they cut into my damage numbers. But do you know what doesn't? Sticky additive. With this ooey gooey engine fuel, your fire adheres to everything a bit easier, causing your ground fires to last longer and raw flames to deal extra damage since the gas itself is stuck to your enemy's carapace. If you've ever experienced boiling liquid getting stuck to your skin, you know exactly what these bugs are going through. But instead of it being hot bacon grease, it's industrial paste burning at 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Yes, I use freedom units. God bless America. Moving over to the balanced overclocks, we have another ammo increase. Compact feed valves lessens the size of critical components within your weapon so you can store more fuel in each tank. Not only does this mean you can spew fire for longer, but it also means you have more fuel in total. And if you really want to get the most bang for your buck, you can equip the heat radiance modification. With an increase in tank size and willingness to use it, everything around you will start rising in temperature without any respite to douse their flames. The problem is that liquids are heavy, so reloading takes a bit longer due to the added weight in your tanks. Additionally, the valves that we shrunk are not just for show. They play a key part in properly regulating fuel line pressure. Since their abilities have been neutered, your stream of flames is now 2 meters shorter. Look, it's not my fault the game uses the metric system. On the other hand, Fuel Stream Diffuser uses pressure to its fullest. Instead of just dribbling fire out the nozzle, it blocks the stream slightly, causing flames to soar an extra 5 meters. It's the same thing that happens when you stick your finger in a garden hose. No, do not stick your finger in a flamethrower to achieve long-range arson. Because the stream is being interfered with, less flammable liquid is being used in any given moment. Translation, your fire rate is reduced. That wasn't supposed to be a pun. My brain is melting. Wait, no! Face Melter is our true introduction to the damage capabilities of the flamethrower. The flavor text claims these changes are from some expert fiddling of gizmos, but let's not dramatize R&D's contribution. All they did is swap out the fuel for something a bit more spicy. The viscosity of this new substance is much thinner than your base fuel, allowing it to flow out of your fire hose much easier at the cost of some range. And because of how volatile your new fuel is, the amount you can store in each tank is reduced, but your total fuel count is not affected. And let's not forget the selling point of this overclock. With Face Melter, your damage is increased when dealt to things unfortunate enough to be caught in your spray. Because you're going to be staring bugs down with the business end of a flamethrower, I'd recommend using the creatively named modification Targets Explode. With this, enemies have a 50% chance to explode on death, dealing significant damage in a radius around them. The catch is that this effect only happens if they die from direct damage, making Face Melter the perfect candidate to blow up some bugs. For the final flamethrower overclock, we go from dealing direct damage to taking the most hands-off approach you can imagine. And I'm not talking about setting enemies on fire and then watching them burn. I'm talking about igniting the floor and then going AFK. Oh, sick, I lived! Sticky fuel replaces the gasoline from your flamethrower with a thick sludge. Because of this fluid's girth, your tank and fuel capacity is reduced. But don't worry, this fuel is more than efficient. The napalm you administer to the feet of your foes lingers on the ground for an extra 6 seconds. Additionally, the goo gets stuck to their toesy woesies, adding a separate instance of damage over time. But that's not all. If you know your way around the CRSPR, you may remember that there are 2 mods for increasing sticky flame duration and another mod for slowing down enemies on your flaming turf. Mix these powers together and you have 14 seconds of flaming terrain with enough heat to grind any assault to a standstill, while inside the danger zone. Thank goodness CC isn't a common occurrence throughout the Driller's kit, or else these hostiles would be in some serious danger. Oh wait, the Cryo Cannon is the king of hard CC, with its freeze ability being au naturel. The question now is, how do you go about inflicting it? With improved thermal efficiency, you choose to inflict this icy curse by spraying as much material as possible. Specifically, this overclock increases pressure drop rate, meaning this little needle goes down slower, allowing for more consistent hosing of ice. Since you are more likely to use a little too much liquid nitrogen, your tank capacity is increased so you don't squander your resources as quickly. Tuned Cooler uses a much more entertaining approach to the freezing objective. Instead of unleashing a stable stream of ice, this overclock increases your flow rate, allowing for more sub-zero liquid to drench your target. Naturally, this would accelerate how quickly something solidifies, but it gets better. Tuned Cooler also increases your cannon's inherent ability to freeze, meaning you are making ice sculptures extra fast. Tragically, there are some downsides. Starting up the Cryo Cannon takes a little bit longer and your pressure gain rate is reduced by 50%. That's when this little needle goes in the other direction. If these consequences are a little too intense for you, then I highly recommend equipping the Fragile modification and then making your judgment. Fragile makes it so that every instance of damage from your freeze thrower has a chance to do massive damage to any frozen enemies in your way. The actual numbers for it are complicated and depend on how hurt your victim is and how high the hazard level is. It's good regardless. Since Tuned Cooler has the highest freeze and hit rate of the Cryo Cannon overclocks, you'll be cracking Carapace before your Frostbite sets in. Flow rate expansion has the same flow rate increase as the previous overclock, but unlike Tuned Cooler, this increases from wider pipes and loosened valves. Because of this, your chamber depressurizes extremely quickly. To balance this, your cannon repressurizes even faster, making the pressure gauge dance and any gap in damage trivial. Now we're getting into some of the more wacky overclocks. Ignore that this one is still considered balanced. It's unstable at heart. Ice Spear adds an additional mechanic to your Cryo Cannon. Pressing the reload button with this overclock equipped opens the valves and dumps an excessive amount of fluid directly into the turbine. Doing this solidifies the spill into a massive hunk of ice that is catapulted out of the mechanism. This projectile does roughly a bajillion damage, so it's exceptional at popping anything that you'd rather not deal with. Just make sure nothing is around when you use this ability, because it immediately drops your pressure to zero and this overclock increases how long it takes for your chamber to start repressurizing. Something also worth noting is that it requires 50 units of fluid to perform this action, so you may want to use it sparingly. Ice Storm is the token damage overclock that we all know and love. With this upgrade, your damage is doubled for twice the thermal action. On top of that, your cannon spews out small chunks of ice, further increasing your damage against frozen targets specifically. I guess non-crystalline glyphids are immune to the effects of tiny rocks hitting them. This aggressive assault of ice cubes is considered kinetic damage instead of cold, probably because the freezing fluid has already solidified. Because a good portion of your resources are freezing inside your weapon, there's less cold available to be transferred to your enemies. This results in not only decreased freezing power, but also less space for liquid nitrogen to be stored. And if decreased tank capacity wasn't enough for you, the chamber depressurizes a lot quicker, making every torrent of ice just a little sadder. But need I remind you, this overclock, at worst, deals double damage. Who cares what the downsides are? That's just awesome! Snowball decides to be a little more complex than just holding down mouse 1. Similar to its destructive brother Ice Spear, Snowball replaces your reload key with a new mechanic. When activated, the pressure chamber is emptied into the turbine. Though unlike Ice Spear, the freezing fluid doesn't condense in time and is sent careening into the distance. This ball of sub-zero material doesn't do much damage, but when it impacts, it splashes freezing mist in every direction, encasing anything unfortunate enough to be nearby. It's safe to say that most things hit by this are frozen instantly, but some big bastards are denser than others and can handle the blistering cold. That's where the secret status effect comes in. I did mention it a bit in my last video, but I was completely wrong. You should still go watch the video anyway, it's good. What Lingering Cold actually does is maintain a small DOT so that if you leave a popsicle half frozen, it won't start thawing for a bit. Now if you really want to spend a quarter of your freezer fluid trying to stop a juggernaut for a single second, you can! It is worth noting that Lingering Cold doesn't do anything to targets that are already frozen, so don't wait too long while your attackers thaw, especially since you only have so much fluid in your tank. Oh, did I mention that earlier? The Snowball Overclock has the highest ammo reduction of the Cryo Cannon. Thankfully, this overclock once again differs from Ice Spear, this time in its consumption rate. While Ice Spear consumes 50 units of fluid for every frozen javelin, Snowball only consumes 25 per watt of frost. This more than makes up for the decreased tank capacity. Oh, but you do have the same +1 repressurization delay. Lastly, we have everyone's favorite nightmare device, the Corrosive Sludge Pump. What, do you think Nightmare was a bit too strong of a descriptor for it? Let's get through the first overclock and you'll see what I mean. Hydrogen ion additive is a special concoction we've dumped into our sludge vat. Whenever one of our globs impacts against a target, the additive activates, further amplifying the corrosive capabilities of your projectile. Along with eroding the carapace of your victim, the sludge also starts eating away at their tendons, causing them to slowly limp towards you as they dissolve into the Viridian haze. See, I told you, nightmarish. And yes, I know it's not a Viridian and more of a lime. Shut up, it sounded cool. AG mixture stands for anti-gravity mixture? Sure, because we definitely wanted this stuff lingering around in the air. With how light these piles of acid already are, combined with less gravity and more velocity, launching this stuff makes it travel in basically a straight line. This adds a significant range boost to the sludge pump and puts the other driller primaries to shame. There's just something so delightfully cursed about taking down a sniper with your point-blank wave clear. Volatile Impact Mixture gets us back on track and focuses on your AoE, more specifically, and importantly, the damage of it. The compound at your disposal in this overclock burns extremely quickly, resulting in double the damage to both your regular and charge shots. Unfortunately, this quick chemical reaction causes the substance to denature at an accelerated rate. This means the corrosive status effect ends sooner and your puddles evaporate faster. All in all, great damage in the short term and depressing in the long. For the next overclock, we've got to talk about the corrosive sludge pump's charge shot. Holding down the fire button congeals a thick wad of slime before catapulting it towards your foes. On impact with anything that's solid, the clumps shatter into multiple fragments, littering the cave with toxic ground hazards. These piles of acid function the same as just shooting the floor, but with the added bonus of providing more melting mounts compared to the ammo consumed. With Disperser Compound, the shattering of your charge shot is much more efficient, causing them to erupt in even more fragments. Though, it's worth noting that the unstable structure of the charge shot results in a significant damage reduction to said projectile. Conversely, the haphazard corrosive shrapnel deals bonus damage if it lands on an unfortunate aggressor. You've basically turned your sludge pump into a launcher of acidic frag grenades. Goo Bomber Special also modifies your charge shot. You know those obnoxious Bacteria that hemorrhage their adhesive fluids all over the place? We're taking a page out of their book and modifying your charge shot to function the same way. As the projectile flies through the sky, it rains down corrosive sludge. These acidic thwomps are the fragments of the charge shot since it doesn't explode on impact. This distinction is important because your fragments deal extra damage if they land on something that's still moving, and your fragment count is increased by 50%. Additionally, every puddle you create lasts longer, making your ionized remodeling of the cave floor a lot less temporary than the tenants would like. Naturally, you'll equip mods that increase your puddle size and duration, but the tier 5s are the mods you really want to pay attention to. Protein Disruption Mix is naturally fantastic, with the corrosive compounds slowing down the enemy advances like the first overclock. But my personal preference is its counterpart. Remember that long word from earlier? Fluoroantimonic acid. Yeah, that one. That means your weapon is launching mini-fridge-sized globs of the strongest acid known to man. I don't know if you realize this, but I'm technically an edutainment channel, so I'm about to edutain you. You know how acid works in movies where anything touched by it is instantly turned into a quivering pile of slime? Well, fluoroantimonic acid is the real-life equivalent to that. Eating through cloth, glass, steel, flesh, and bone, it's a wonder how dwarves don't suffer the same fate as your foes when traversing this sludge-ridden wasteland. Finally, we have Sludge Blast, and once again we'll focus on the charge shots. This overclock replaces your single glob of condensed goo into a shotgun blast of burning matter. Since all the balls are launched simultaneously, they are all considered charge shots and not fragments. This means the damage is dramatically increased even though your charge shot damage is cut in half. You can use these numbers along with the double charge shot velocity to eradicate a wave from overhead or afar, but the main draw is for use against larger prey. Caressing large enemies with the nozzle of your sludge pump before firing lets every pellet of slime collide with your target. On its own, this is enough to seriously damage anything in front of you, but with a slower reload and less ammo, you may not have the resources to finish off the behemoth you pissed off. Thankfully, we're playing Driller. The sludge they're covered in is just as corrosive as always, so there is a decent chance your victim succumbs to your DOT and is erased from the game. And there you have it, every primary driller overclock has a critical corruption. And before you go, yes I see you outro skippers, let me know if you want a behind the scenes video / livestream thing. I'm not quite sure on the full details yet, but I want to hear your thoughts on the matter. Anyway, duct tape your dissolving hazmat suit and go disintegrate everything.